Isaiah chapter 1, we'll pick up in verse 21. We've been walking the last few weeks through the start of the book of Isaiah. As we talk about today, we're going to talk about restoration to ruin. And as we talk about that, there is one thing that you can always tell a first-time parent versus a parent of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or more kids. And the way to be able to tell the first-time parent is when you have a first-time parent, their little one falls and scrapes their knee or, whatever else, something kind of minor, there's not blood spurting everywhere, but, something kind of minor. The first-time parent, when they see it happen, they're jumping up and freaking out, oh, baby is hurt. The second, third, fourth-time parent, they just kind of look back and like, no bones sticking out, you're fine. Get up and go on. And I will tell you, although my mom, a couple weeks ago I told a story about my mom and the 2x4 story. Well, I'll tell you one in which my mom was much nicer. I was the third, I'm the baby of the family. And if you ask my sister, she would say I definitely am the baby. But there was a time I was about 4 or 5 years old. We were up at my dad's parents, my papa's house, and was riding a horse, and yes, 4 or 5 year old, I was riding a full-size horse. I know for some of you that, especially first-time parents, you're probably going, oh my goodness, he was on a... Yeah, I was, no big deal, okay? Except for one thing, this horse had a bad habit. When he saw the barn, this horse took off running. And I was not quite ready for that, and I fell off, and I landed in some gravel, and I kind of got cut up a little bit. Well, my mom, unlike her normal nature, I guess, my mom ran out and scooped me up, and she was babying me, took me in, got me all fixed back up, but didn't put me back on the horse, which it took me a long time. It took me until almost my senior year in high school before I was able to get over that fear of horses. And so it was, the one time that my mom demonstrated that sweet motherly nature. She didn't do anything. I'm looking over, I'm going to get beat after this. That 2x4 story may come back. There are no 2x4s not being used out there. Okay? The one time that she really demonstrated that, I didn't, later it was like, man, I wish she hadn't. I wish she had put me right back on that horse. The restoration, those first-time parents, they just learned that sometimes you got to let the kids suffer. Sometimes you got to let them hurt. Well, today we're going to read a story from Isaiah in which God tells his people of Judah and Jerusalem that there's going to become a time when they will suffer. And God forewarns the nation that this is coming. And he tells them right up front, there are going to be some very hard times coming. We're going to read much more about this throughout the rest of the book of Isaiah. But here he tells them there is going to be some hard times coming. And he tells them why those hard times are going to come. But then he ends it up with hope. Let's read Isaiah chapter 1, beginning of verse 21. See how the faithful city has become a prostitute. She once was full of justice. Righteousness used to dwell in her, but now murderers. Your silver has become dross. Your choice wine is diluted with water. Your rulers are rebels, partners with thieves. They all love bribes and chase after gifts. They do not defend the cause of the fatherless. The widow's case does not come before them. Therefore, the Lord Almighty, the mighty one of Israel, declares, I will vent my wrath on my foes and avenge myself on my enemies. I will turn my hand against you. I will thoroughly purge away your dross and remove all your impurities. I will restore your leaders as in days of old, your rulers as at the beginning. Afterwards you will be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. Zion will be delivered with justice, her penitent ones with righteousness. But rebels and sinners will both be broken, and those who forsake the Lord will perish. You will be ashamed because of the sacred oaks in which you have delighted. You will be disgraced because of the gardens that you have chosen. You will be like an oak with fading leaves, like a garden without water. The mighty man will become tender and his work a spark. Both will burn together with no one to quench the fire. The city of Judah, Jerusalem, had gone from being righteous to being murderers. Isaiah looks back at a time when Jerusalem was marked with righteousness. Now there is disagreement as to exactly when that was. Some scholars say, well, this was speaking about the reign of King David and the reign of Solomon. And there is a lot of truth to that. David was a righteous king in so many ways, and Solomon, the first part of his reign, Solomon was a man that followed after God. He was a man who asked God for wisdom. God says to him, I'll give you anything you want. And Solomon says, give me wisdom that I can rule your people with justice and with integrity. But at the same time, it says that the rulers from Jerusalem went from being righteous to being murderers. Well, you can't say that David wasn't a murderer. The whole story of Bathsheba and Uriah. David didn't reach out his hand and kill Uriah with his own hand. But David was a murderer. David is the one that sent Uriah to the front lines. He was the one that told Joab to pull back and to let Uriah die in that battle. And Solomon, again, Solomon, the beginning of his reign, was a righteous king. He was a man that definitely was obedient to God's commands. But then Solomon, the wealth, the power maybe began to get to him, and he married so many foreign wives that those foreign wives began to entice Solomon to worship their deities and worship their gods. And Solomon, by the end of his reign, had wandered so far from God that in the next generation the kingdom was divided. But even if those two, you take the good parts of their reigns, Isaiah says something happened. Sometime after David and Solomon, that the kings of Judah, the kings that had lived in Jerusalem, went from bad to worse, to worse, to worse. And yes, there were some good and righteous kings during this time. There were even during the times of Isaiah's life, there were some good and righteous kings. But Isaiah says that the city itself just became filled with evil. As I was reading that, I was thinking about those words, began to think back and to say, we need to be careful in romanticizing the past. Many in our nation look back to 1950s America and say what a great time. It was such a good time, such a wholesome time, such a wonderful time that things were so good. And I would say, yes, for many people it was. But folks, if you were an African American in the Deep South in the 1950s, it wasn't such a great time. The civil rights were violated repeatedly. You couldn't go to a gas station restroom. You couldn't drink out of the water fountain unless you found the one that was for colors only. We need to be very careful as we look back at romanticizing the past. Yes, there's a lot of things that were good. There's also a lot of things that weren't. There were a lot of problems in our nation. And I think as Isaiah looks back, he would say, yes, even in the best times of Judah and Jerusalem, there were problems. Then Isaiah begins to focus on the current. He says that the current rulers of Jerusalem were focused only on economic gain. And they went after that economic gain without consideration of ethics and morality. For them, the only thing that mattered was making money and increasing their own power. Folks, as we look at our own society, America's leadership is much the same. On the Democratic side, you have millionaires calling for socialistic policies. People who have already made their wealth now want to hold everyone else back from achieving the same level of wealth. And before you get mad and say, well, wait, well, let's go to the Republicans. On the Republican side, you have millionaires that are calling for policies that so many times hurt the poorest and most destitute. When we were down in Mexico on our trip and spent a couple of days there, part of the day we spent on the Mexican side of the U.S. border. And as we were there, we were working in an immigrant camp. In this camp, there were 2,000 to 3,000 people there waiting. These individuals were waiting not to get into the U.S., but they were waiting to be able to see a judge to set a court hearing for some time in the future. At that point, they would actually begin to work the process that would probably take them years to be able to get into the U.S. And here these people are waiting, many of them waiting for months, just to be able to see a judge that would set a hearing for them way off in the future. You know, and as I was looking at that, it just struck me how messed up this was. Here are these people that all they're waiting for is for a judge to be able to sit down with them for 10 minutes and say, okay, you've got to, let's set your case up for December of 2019. Why are they sitting there? Well, they're sitting there because our leaders in Congress, our national leaders, are using those individuals as pawns in a game of power. That's the reality. The people that are suffering are looked at as just the pawns in the game. What Isaiah says about the rulers of Judah and Jerusalem at the time in which he is ministering, he says that's the kind of people they are. They look at the common folk not as people that they have been given the responsibility to help, the responsibility to lead, to guide, to bring safety and protection for them, but they saw them as just simply an opportunity to make money, simply a way to gain power and to increase their power. It was so bad that Isaiah says that their silver, their wealth, has become dross. What is dross? It is the junk that is left over when silver is purified. He says, even your wealth is now garbage. He says to the leaders of Jerusalem, your entire life has become worthless trash. And why is that? It's because they had turned from God. And they had turned to evil. Folks, in so many ways, our own nation is in that same place. No matter which side of the aisle you want to sit on, so many of our leaders simply look out for themselves. And we read that and we think, what hope is there? What hope was there for Judah and for Jerusalem? And what hope is there for us? Well, there is hope. And that is restoration from ruin. That's what Isaiah talks about in verses 24 through 31. First, he foretells the destruction of Jerusalem. Isaiah tells and says that there is going to come a time when the city of Jerusalem will be destroyed. Well, we know that this prophecy was fulfilled in 587 BC. In 587 BC, the Babylonian army came into Jerusalem and just almost leveled the entire city. It happened again in the Roman War in the early 70s AD. The city was almost completely destroyed again. This city that had been this shining light on a hill was laid waste and destroyed. And it looks like at that time that everything is hopeless. Because no nation can survive being destroyed and having its leaders and the majority of its people pulled out from that region, taken to another place, and basically resettled in another place in and amongst all these other groups of nations. And that's exactly what happened to the people of Israel. People of Judah and Israel, they were taken away. They were taken off to another place, and they tried to assimilate them with all the other nations. But God says, my people will return, and Jerusalem will be restored. And that Jerusalem would once again be under the control of the Jewish people. Well, that restoration was partially fulfilled when Jerusalem returned to at least partial Jewish control. So there was a partial restoration. But there's a restoration yet to come. Because you see, Jerusalem is still not what it should be. Jerusalem is still not that perfect holy city that God wants it to be. And it will not be that perfect holy city until Jesus returns and restores all things. And Jerusalem is completely remade and made perfect. For America, our hope lies not in the Republican Party. It lies not in the Democratic Party. It doesn't lie in the Libertarian Party. Our hope doesn't lie in politics. Our hope lies in a return to God. Our hope lies in the one who can take away the stain of sin. Our hope lies in the one who can take a destroyed city and rebuild it. Our hope lies in the one who took a body that died and restored it to life, never to die again. Our hope lies in the one whose body was destroyed, a body whose life was taken away because he gave it up for us. Our hope lies in the truth that one who died rose again on the third day, walked with his disciples, ascended to the Father with the promise that one day he would return. Our nation has only one hope, and that is to return to our Savior. Will you return to Jesus and see restoration from ruin? You know, on an individual basis, this verses is talking about the nation as a whole, but it also fits on an individual basis. Each and every one of us faces times where it seems like ruin is all about us. It seems like destruction has come upon us. And each and every one of us has to ask ourselves, do we believe that our God can bring restoration? Do we believe that our God can restore our lives, our hopes, and our futures? Well, I will tell you that I believe that He can. I believe that God can restore. I've seen families that every indication was that the family was destroyed, that the relationship between mother and father was broken beyond repair. I've seen families where the children were fighting each other, families where the children didn't want to even be near each other. I've seen restoration for those families. I've seen lives that were destroyed by drugs and alcohol and immoral behavior. I've seen those families turn to Christ. Those individuals turn to Christ and to see the life be changed. I met a young lady this week who was at a court hearing for another family to get their child back. It's a family that they would tell you straight up, they destroyed their life. They deserved for their child to be taken away. The family this couple has made so many right steps that they're working hard. They've become believers. God is working in their life, making some incredible changes. It was really neat to be able to sit in that courtroom and talk with another young lady that was there, kind of supporting this couple, and to hear this lady's story. And when she talked, she said, their story was mine 5 years ago. And then the lady that is discipling the wife in this family, she's the one that introduced me to this other one. And she told me, she said, you got to hear her story. It was an amazing story. Yes, she spent time in jail. Yes, she had done drugs. Yes, she had destroyed her life in so many ways. She said, but came to know Jesus Christ as my personal, she said, not just Savior, but as my Lord. And He restored my life. She said He gave me a life now that I'm able to give back and to help others. She's gotten through college. She is working, got a great job, working in a place, volunteering her time, where she's helping others that are coming out of a lifestyle of addiction. Folks, God can restore from the wrecks that we make our life. And that is the hope that we have, is God's restoration. And so I want to ask you again, if you put your hope in Jesus, when you return to Him and see restoration from the ruin. Let's pray together. Our Father in heaven, Lord, I pray that as we come to a time of invitation, Father, I know there are people here that maybe their life hasn't been ruined, hasn't been destroyed, but they would say their life isn't all that it should be. Father, I pray that those who are here today that recognize that the choices they've made in life have led them down a wrong path, and that they're laying down a path that's going to end up in worse and worse. Father, I pray that you would call them today, that they would turn from that path, that they would turn to your Son Jesus and be restored. We pray this in His name. Amen. Let's stand and sing.